Coming up on Network Africa. Nigeria's Monetary Policy Committee retains all monetary rates after its today's meeting. For the second time in 2 weeks, Egypt's highest appeal court overturns a life sentence handed down to ousted President Mohamed Morsi. And farmers in southern Madagascar say there's an urgent need for crops for the December to January planting season. Thanks for joining us. I'm Dr. Rogers. We start off in Nigeria, where the Monetary Policy Committee of the Central Bank today left the key monetary policy parameters unchanged. The 10-member committee all voted to retain the MPR at 14%, retain the CRR at 22.5%, retain the liquidity ratio at 30%, and retain the asymmetric window at plus 200 and minus 500 basis points around the MPR. The 253rd meeting of the committee, which ended today in Abuja, is the final meeting of the committee for 2016.
Overall, members call for an enrichment of fiscal and other sector initiatives and interventions towards resolving the growth challenges in the economy in order to promptly revive confidence in the economy. Available data and forecasts of key economic variables indicate that the outlook for growth and inflation in the medium term continues to be challenging. Growth is expected to remain less robust given the absence of sufficient fiscal space, while the current tight stance of monetary policy and improved agricultural harvest are expected to contain further price increases and moderate price expectations, as the trend has already revealed. Decisions. Committee assessed the relevant risks to the global and domestic economy and concluded that the risks to the economy remained highly elevated on two fronts, price and output. However, considering the importance of price stability and being mindful of the limitations of monetary policy in influencing output and employment under the conditions of stagflation, committee decided unanimously in favor of retaining the current stance of monetary policy, first keeping MPR at 14% alongside all other policy parameters. In summary, all 10 MPC members voted to 1. Retain MPR at 14%, retain CRR at 22.5%, retain liquidity ratio at 30%, retain the asymmetric window at plus 200 and minus 500 basis points around the MPR.
Two economists.
CBN Governor Godwin Emefiele speaking there. We'll get more what that means for the average Nigerian later on in the program, and we'll be joined by Channels TV Business News editor Bosun Omofaye. But moving on, 5 war veterans have been put on trial in Zimbabwe's capital Harare, accused of undermining the authority of President Robert Mugabe. The accusations come after the War Veterans Association in July stated that it was withdrawing its backing for the president. In a statement, the veterans accused Mr. Mugabe of the dictatorial tendencies, egocentrism and misrule. It also accuses the 92-year-old president of abandoning them for the ZANU-PF's Youth League. The war veterans had supported Robert Mugabe for the last 3 decades. Meanwhile, Egypt's highest appeal court has overturned a life sentence handed down to ousted President Mohamed Morsi. The Court of Cassation ordered that the 65-year-old be retried on the charge of conspiring to commit terrorist acts with foreign organizations. Last week, the court quashed a death sentence handed to Mr. Morsi in a separate case revolving around a mass prison break during the 2011 revolution. But he is still serving lengthy sentences related to 2 other cases. Mohamed Morsi became Egypt's first democratically elected president in 2012, but he was removed by the military a year later after mass protests against his rule. In other stories, Turkish electrical cable factory BMET has resumed full operations after being burnt by protesters in Ethiopia's Oromia region last month. The region has been hit by an unprecedented wave of anti-government protests in recent months. The company says it suffered $6 million in damages, with other losses from the period of closure still being assessed. Several foreign-owned businesses were attacked in Oromia in October following a stampede at a religious festival in which 55 people died. Protesters said the violence by the security forces led to the stampede, an accusation denied by the government. Well, the Catholic Church in Burundi has asked the government to reopen talks with the opposition to facilitate the return of thousands of Burundian refugees. Burundi has been on the brink of chaos since Pierre Nkurunziza announced a controversial bid for a third term in April 2015 and subsequently won the elections. Thousands had fled the country, fearing that the crackdown by security forces on anti-government protesters would plunge the country into a civil war. In reference to the ongoing tension, the chairman of the country's Conference of Catholic Bishops says inclusive talks is necessary to end the crisis. According to the UN Refugee Agency, more than 200,000 Burundians have fled the country in the last 19 months. Let's bring you more on the ruling in Egypt today in favor of Mohamed Morsi's life sentence, overturning the life sentence. And the VOA's Edward Yeranian joins us to discuss this. Good to have you on the program, Edward.
Thank you for having me.
Right, first tell us, what does this mean for Mr. Morsi?
Well, it means that he's gone through a significant part of the judicial procedures against him, but it's not close to being finished, and he still must serve a 20-year sentence, which was already confirmed. So he's been able to appeal several of the cases. The verdicts have been quashed, but he will have to be retried on those same charges. So he's really not close to being finished.
Last week, the court quashed a death sentence handing over his neck. Now, today, this. What do you think we would see? Do you think we'll see more of this in the coming days, months?
Well, I believe that the government is trying to find some way to de-escalate with the Muslim Brotherhood in general, but I don't know that it's going to happen quickly, and I think a bit of it depends on what the Muslim Brotherhood does itself, and it really doesn't necessarily pertain to the specific charges of these cases.
Why is the Court of Cassation doing this now?
I didn't quite catch that question.
I said, why is the court, making these moves now?
Well, some analysts think that it's related to the world political situation, which is to say the new U.S. administration coming in Washington, which is significantly more pro-Egyptian government and anti-Muslim Brotherhood. So the Muslim Brotherhood is feeling the pressure and is perhaps trying to seek some sort of reconciliation with the government, and may very well be willing to back down on some of its demands.
I know that the court is calling for a retrial, for the sentences being handed down. What's the implication of a retrial for Mr. Morsi and for the country?
Well, the implication is that this legal procedure will continue for a very, very long time if there is no political solution or political agreement.
Right, thank you so much for your time on the program. That was the voice of the VOA's Edward Yeranian joining us to discuss the situation in Egypt. Well, coming up on the program. Despite the state of emergency, thousands take part in the Great Ethiopian Run. Do join us again. Welcome back to Network Africa. Farmers in southern Madagascar say the country urgently needs support to grow crops in time for the December to January planting season. Various agencies have joined forces to get thousands of farmers to grow drought-resistant crops and care for their livestock in the worst affected districts. Now, the World Food Programme warns that hunger would reach emergency levels by the end of the year if nothing is done.
3 years of successive drought in southern Madagascar has made it difficult for farmers in the region to produce crops in their farms. Lack of sufficient rains caused by El Nino has brought about a significant decline in production of maize, cassava and rice, according to the Food and Agriculture Organization, leaving millions hungry. The World Food Programme has been distributing food aid and cash relief to those affected. Overall, some 1.4 million people in the south are food insecure, with at least 600,000 severely food insecure, according to a recent assessment carried out by the Ministry of Agriculture, the United Nations Food and Agriculture Organization, and WFP.
We suffer from the famine. Children and old people have no food. We need help to install water pumps. Even a small aid will help.
El Nino, a warning of sea surface temperatures in the Pacific, has aggravated dry conditions and a worsening food crisis not only in Madagascar, an island 400 kilometers off the coast of mainland Africa, but also across the wider southern African region. Although the Australian Bureau of Meteorology says the phenomenon, which started in 2015, had ended in May this year, millions on the continent are still feeling the effects. In Sarampioke village, farmers are being supported to irrigate farms and are being trained to grow crops and care for their livestock through the use of supplementary feeding of livestock and animal health-related activities.
We have been trying to respond to the emergencies, but also at the same time to build the resilience capacities of the communities to be able to take care of themselves. And one example, like in the seed sectors, FAO is providing the capacity for the communities to be able to produce themselves.
United Nations agencies are calling for urgent action to address the worsening situation, which needs about $67 million in food and farming support. Even in relatively normal times, many Malagasis still struggle to eat enough food, and the right kind. Nearly half the children are stunted, and little progress has been made over the past 20 years. In southern Madagascar, 1 household in 3 has already been forced into desperate measures, such as selling their house or land, begging, or migrating.
Coming up on the program, a look at Nigeria's counter-terrorism efforts. That's in a moment. Please stay with us.